Hello, everybody. What's up? This is the Do Dissidents podcast. My name is Keaton Weiss here with Russell Dobular.
Hello.
And of course, today we have the great pleasure and the honor of welcoming an award winning journalist, host of Pushback, and writer for the GrayZone and on Substack at mate.substack.com. Aaron Maté, thank you, sir, so much. It's great to meet you. Thanks for making the time for us.
Thanks for having me. Good to be here.
Absolutely. So, I'm a subscriber to your Substack, and we've been covering Russia-Ukraine for quite a while on this show, especially since the word leaked from the White House that we're closer to nuclear Armageddon than we've been in 60 years. I think that's a big story. Russell thinks that's a big story. I know you do. Not much of the media seems to care very much. But you wrote a recent piece called The Endless Proxy War by Design. And so I just want to jump right into this. So you begin this piece by saying that Russia's invasion of Ukraine has presented the White House with a geopolitical crisis that it played a critical role in creating. And you then go on to claim that the 2014 regime change in Kyiv made Biden, who at the time, of course, was Obama's VP, the most influential political figure in Ukraine. So can you expand upon that a little bit? Because most people in our spheres are kind of broadly familiar with the West's role in sort of egging on this conflict, but not many are familiar with how Biden himself played such a crucial role. So do you want to start by fleshing that out a bit?
Yeah. So if you listen to the leaked phone call between Victoria Nuland, who was then a top official in Obama's State Department and is now back under Biden as a top official in Biden's State Department, she says that when she's talking about this plan that they have to impose basically a new Ukrainian government, which includes Prime Minister Yatsenyuk, who she selects as the prime minister, and that's who became the prime minister a few weeks later after the coup. She says that we need someone to glue this thing together, and she says it's got to be Biden and Jake Sullivan, and back then Sullivan was Biden's top aide. And so lo and behold, a few weeks later, when there was a coup in Ukraine and Yatsenyuk became the prime minister, it was Biden who was very involved in that plan and involved in that process, who, as a result of that, immediately took on a very influential role inside of Ukraine. And there's actually a lot of leaked recordings that have come out between him and one of the early Ukrainian presidents after the coup, Poroshenko, in which Biden is heavily involved. They've only been covered, as far as I know, in the right-wing media, like on One American News Network. They did a special where they got some leaked recordings in which Biden and Poroshenko are talking, and they're talking about something to do with money and also something to do with the fact that Ukrainian special services tried to conduct some sort of operation inside of either it was Crimea or Donbass, one of those two areas. I think it was Crimea, and they got caught, and Biden was upset about that, which just underscores how deeply involved Biden was in U.S. policy there and in running Ukraine. And that's also, there's the famous tape of him bragging that he got a prosecutor general fired after he threatened to withhold $1 billion in loans. And on his way out of office, when he was under Obama, when they were leaving office in the fall of 2016, there was an article in Foreign Policy magazine that was headlined, "What will Ukraine do without Uncle Joe?" And that just underscores how deeply involved Uncle Joe was in Ukraine, and to the point where I think the strongest piece of evidence for that was the fact that his son Hunter, who had no experience at all in the energy field, was gifted with this lucrative board seat on Burisma, the same company that the fired prosecutor was investigating when Joe Biden got him fired. So Biden and the people around him, Victoria Nuland, Jake Sullivan, Antony Blinken, Samantha Power, all these people who were there back when the Obama administration backed a coup in 2014, they're now back in power. And that's why they all have huge responsibility for the current crisis that is unfolding.
Okay, so I wanted to ask you, some people say that the 2014 Maidan Revolution was actually driven by false flag operations by the right. And now one of your colleagues actually wrote an article that they're releasing members of the Tornado Battalion who were responsible for severe atrocities in the East. I think we're not really I don't think a lot of people are aware of how much of a right-wing problem there is in Ukraine. Can you speak to that at all?
Well, okay, so the false flag element you're asking about speaks to the Maidan massacre,
Yes.
which occurred just a few days before Yanukovych was ousted in February 2014. And that's when a lot of people in Maidan Square were gunned down by snipers. And at the time, the Yanukovych government was blamed for this. The U.S. blamed Yanukovych for this. U.S. allies blamed Yanukovych for this. And that was one of the factors that led to the events that led to Yanukovych's ouster, to the coup. But since then, there's been this very weird thing in Ukraine where basically nobody's been held accountable for the massacre. There have been court cases, but no one's really paid attention to what those court cases have actually demonstrated, except for a few people. And one of them is a Ukrainian-Canadian academic named Ivan Kachanovsky, who's done a bunch of academic papers on this. And I haven't read everything he's written, but I've read basically the summaries of them. And he says that it's overwhelmingly demonstrable that all the evidence points to the Maidan massacre being committed by the pro-coup side, and that the snipers were not in buildings under government control. They were buildings under the control of the Maidan movement. And at the time, the Maidan movement was, at that point, it had, after initially being, peaceful, in the tens of thousands, and people rallying against corruption of Yanukovych and also rallying for integration with the European Union. At that point, a lot of those people had gone away, and what was left behind was like a hardcore fascist element, which the fascists bragged about, that they were the core of what was left up until the end of Maidan. And so, look, it's just, I haven't done all the research into who exactly did what, but someone who I really think is very credible, this academic Ivan Kachanovsky, has done this work, and he says the evidence is pretty overwhelming. This was actually carried out by the pro-Maidan side, and that makes sense. They were looking for a coup, even when there was a deal reached with Yanukovych and some Maidan leaders to have a new coalition government and quick elections. The fascist element of the Maidan rejected that and refused to have any sort of a settlement that would keep Yanukovych in power. So you have, I think, certainly the display of intent and motive, and you have studies that have come out pointing to evidence that this was carried out by the pro-Maidan side. And so that is, just one example of the far right fascist element that was there, and it's just not controversial anymore. I mean, right after the coup in 2014, there was an article in Foreign Policy magazine by two Western think tankers, and said the uncomfortable truth is that a majority of the people who came to power with this coup were fascists, and they bragged about it. Earlier this year, a member of a gang, one of the gangs that was involved in the Maidan coup, said that without us, it would have been a gay pride parade. And we made sure that this was
Wow.
So it's not hidden.
All right, so we laid out the recent history pretty well. Now, I want to go back to the Joe and Hunter Biden thing, and caution, this is where we might start coddling the right wing a little bit for anybody who might be upset about that, all right? Just be fair warning here. You laid out how Joe Biden was really an integral part of that coup and the formation of the Ukrainian government afterwards. We obviously know that Hunter was employed at a Ukrainian energy company, and Donald Trump asked for an investigation into this. Now, I have no doubt he did that for the same reason Trump does pretty much anything, which is for sort of narrow-minded, selfish reasons, because he thought he was going to be running against Biden and he wanted dirt on him. Okay, fair enough. Setting aside that, whatever that motivation is, it seems to me, like, given all that history that you just laid out for us, that it's not unreasonable to think an investigation might be warranted. And certainly in retrospect, now, given what's happening now, where you have Joe Biden, president, funneling tens of billions of dollars of money out to Ukraine, is it unreasonable to say, hey, why don't we look into this?
No, I don't think it's unreasonable. But the question over Trump's impeachment was it reasonable for him to pressure Ukraine to do it? And this was the allegation, that he leveraged U.S. military aid based on Ukraine conducting that investigation. That was the allegation. I don't think the people who brought impeachment, and I wrote about this tirelessly at the time, ever actually proved that there was a link between the frozen military aid and the pressure that Ukraine was receiving from Trump and Giuliani to conduct investigations. If you talk to all the Ukrainians involved, including Zelensky and all of his advisors, they say they never felt any such linkage at all.
Yeah, I remember that. Yep.
And no one could ever demonstrate that there was ever any evidence of it. The problem is our media here was rebounding from the failure of Russiagate, and were embarrassed, and just like Democrats needed something to make themselves look credible, and so they all just latched on to this narrative from Adam Schiff that Trump had like held Ukraine hostage by holding up military aid to investigate Joe Biden, and didn't look at the actual facts. And the facts showed that actually there was no proven linkage between these two requests. Now, in terms of, still though, does Trump have a right to ask for that investigation as a president, especially if it involves a political rival? No, I did think that was inappropriate. But in terms of the question is that a worthy area of investigation? Absolutely, especially when you have documented instances of Ukrainians actually interfering in the 2016 election. This was overlooked because we're supposed to only focus on, I think, the myth of this massive Russian interference campaign. But it's a fact that in the summer of 2016, some Ukrainians leaked some information to the New York Times, this black ledger showing secret payments by Ukrainian oligarchs to Paul Manafort that were off the books. And when this came out, Paul Manafort had to resign. He was forced out because it was so controversial. And that was done openly. I mean, you had Ukrainian officials saying that we're doing this because we want to undermine Donald Trump's campaign, because they thought that Trump would not be as friendly to them as Hillary Clinton was, which, was well-founded, although Trump was ultimately pressured into doing carrying out even more hawkish policies than Obama had been. But that's another story. So you had open interference by Ukrainians in the election, which did hurt Trump's campaign. And so Trump understandably was upset about that and wanted that looked into. And that got sort of tied up with his questions about Joe Biden and his influence inside of Ukraine. But in terms of, is that a legitimate question for someone to ask, for someone to investigate? Yeah, of course it is.
Well, so speaking of legitimate investigations, I'm sure Chuck Grassley just wrote a letter to the Department of Justice and to the FBI. He claims he has whistleblowers who can prove or who assert that they have evidence that Joe Biden knew about Hunter Biden's dealings with Burisma, and that he may have been involved, in addition to some accusations about connections to deals with the Chinese Communist Party. Do you think if the Republicans come into power, they may pursue this, leading to some form of impeachment?
So I haven't heard of this letter. Is this recent? Is this week, or when was this?
This is in the last couple of days.
Okay, yeah. So I haven't heard of it.
He claims he has whistleblowers with information.
Yeah.
And he claims the FBI is sitting on the evidence. And his letter was demanding the release of that information.
Well, look, it's hard for me to comment on that because I haven't seen it yet. But look, these things could go either way. Republicans have talked a big game before about investigating certain things, and then they don't. And they sometimes claim to have evidence that doesn't bear out, So, and look, just going from past experience, during Russiagate, when they tried to investigate the conduct of the FBI, there were some Republicans who were willing to do it, like Devin Nunes and his staff, but they got sabotaged by other Republicans who didn't want the FBI investigated because they're so tied to the national security state. So I don't have full confidence that Republicans, even when it suits their own partisan interests, are willing to take on the intelligence community, just because both parties are so ultimately in lockstep with the CIA and the FBI.
Yeah, I mean, that seems to be where you can't go. It seems like most Republicans still, in terms of just raw numbers, are probably more loyal to the deep state, quote unquote, than they are to even Trump himself. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and look, I mean, look what happened. Trump ran on a platform that included, non-military intervention. He was critical of Hillary Clinton for getting involved in regime change wars in Libya and Syria. And what did Trump do? He pretty much continued all the same policies. When he tried to be a little bit independent and, for example, withdraw troops from Syria, his underlings just said no, and they sabotaged it. So it speaks to who really has power in this country, that it doesn't matter what a president really wants to do or says they want to do. They just only have so much power. And when it goes against the entrenched bureaucracy in the military industrial complex, they're just not going to win.
All right, so let me just read another passage from your piece, because you quote a Washington Post article from October 11th, and the quote is, "Privately, U.S. officials say neither Russia nor Ukraine is capable of winning the war outright, but they have ruled out the idea of pushing or even nudging Ukraine to the negotiating table. They say they do not know what the end of the war looks like or how it might end or when, insisting that that is up to Kyiv. Quote, that's a decision for the Ukrainians to make," a senior State Department official said. "Our job now is to help them be in absolutely the best position militarily on the battlefield for that day when they do choose to go to the diplomatic table." And so it seems like they're saying this is basically going to be fought to a stalemate, but the more money we pump in, the more weapons we pump in, the better deal they'll get in the end, and it's their fight, not ours. You do a pretty good job of dismantling what is, I think, a fairly absurd argument there in the piece. So do you want to lay that out?
Well, look, it's so disingenuous. So first of all, they admit that they don't think that their own side can win the war outright. That's the side that they can impact. They can't impact the Russian side and Russia's decisions. They can't impact the Ukrainian side because that's the side that the U.S. is arming and giving intelligence to. So here they're acknowledging that they don't think Ukraine can actually win the war outright. So why would you want to continue the war if you know that they can't win it? Well, the answer is because they don't care about Ukrainian lives. They want to use Ukraine as much as they can to weaken Russia, as Lloyd Austin articulated, and has long been openly expressed by U.S. policymakers and planners. I mean, go back to Trump's first impeachment. We talked about Adam Schiff got up and said, the United States aids Ukraine and her people so that we can fight Russia over there, and we don't have to fight Russia here. So Adam Schiff, even before this round of the war started 2 years ago, was saying that the U.S. was using Ukraine to fight Russia over there. And so that's what they want to do. And then to say that, well, this is, negotiations are a matter for the Ukrainians to decide. We know that's not true. We know that's not true because there's been now multiple reports from the Ukrainian side, from the Russian side, and from the American side that there were peace talks back in March and April. They got somewhere. They reached some sort of agreement. We don't know exactly how specific and how detailed, but something. And it was sabotage. Boris Johnson came over and told Zelensky, we're not going to give you security guarantees. And we don't think Putin should be negotiated with. He should be pressed. That's a message to keep fighting. And that if you try to end the war, we're not going to back you up, which then makes any peace deal with Russia worthless. Because if the U.S. and UK won't give Ukraine security guarantees, then a peace deal is not going to matter. So that is actually how the U.S. has treated Ukraine's agency when they've tried before to negotiate. They've undermined it, and then they claim that our goal is to put Ukraine in the best position possible on the battlefield when they finally decide that they can negotiate. Well, how's that looking right now? Russia's already taken 20% of Ukraine. They've lost a little bit of that. So recently, Ukraine had a successful counteroffensive in Kharkiv and in that town of Liman, but those offensives also came at the cost, according to people on the Ukrainian side, of thousands and even tens of thousands of lives. So that kind of victory for Ukraine, I don't think, I'm not a military expert at all, but that doesn't sound to me like that is a very sustainable form of victory that they can repeat again and again and again. So this idea that the U.S. is trying to put Ukraine in a better position for eventual negotiations, especially now that Russia is calling up 300,000 more troops, which will give Russia a far bigger advantage than it's already had to date when it's done not bad, I think is just completely disingenuous. And it's just a recipe for more Ukrainians to senselessly die.
Well, that's the thing. In a war of attrition, how can a small country like Ukraine beat Russia in the end? They have an amount of material and men that cannot be overwhelmed by a country like Ukraine. So what do you think the overall strategic objective of the West is here? Why are we prolonging a war that can't be won?
Yeah, look, and one of the reasons why I hold this view is that this used to be articulated by people like Antony Blinken. So Blinken, back when he was working for Obama, and Obama had this, to his credit, a policy of not further inflaming a proxy war that he started when he refused, against the pressure of everybody inside his cabinet, literally everybody, including Joe Biden, to send more weapons to Ukraine. Obama said he didn't want to do that for two reasons. One, he didn't want to arm thugs, and that was a reference to neo-Nazis, which at that time were the shock troops of the Ukrainian offensive against the Donbass, so including the Azov battalion. And back then, you could read in the New York Times that Azov was openly neo-Nazi. Now they're celebrated. But back then, you were allowed to say that.
That was
so
in
Obama.
that was in the Guardian.
The
Guardian did a whole piece about that.
Yeah. That wasn't censored back then.
I'm sorry to cut you off. I never heard that said before. So Obama actually listed as part of his rationale for not doing this the fact that he didn't want to arm,
there's a
undesirables, thugs, whatever.
There's a line in the New York Times article from that period when they were talking about the heavy pressure that Obama was getting from everybody in Washington, his own cabinet, all the think tanks, all the major people who became the stars of Trump's first impeachment, like what's his name? The general, the former U.S. envoy to Ukraine. He was one of the major guys. His name escapes me right now. He's now the head of the U.S. Institute for Peace. But he's a hardcore war hawk who was accusing Obama of appeasement back then because he wasn't prepared to send weapons to Ukraine. So there's a line in one of these New York Times articles where Obama says he didn't want to send the weapons because he was worried about them ending up in the hands of thugs.
Wow.
And it's pretty easy to read between the lines who he's referring to. He's talking about neo-Nazis because it was obvious at the time, and you could talk about it back then. It wasn't censored like it is now, that Ukraine had a serious problem with the far right, including inside their own military, where the neo-Nazi Azov battalion is formally incorporated into the military as an official battalion. So that was back then. And so that was the policy. And so Blinken had to go, and Blinken at the time was working as an undersecretary in the State Department. So Blinken had to go out and defend Obama's policy. So he said that, the reason why we're not sending these weapons is because that would actually ultimately serve Russia's advantage, because Russia, no matter what we do, will always be able to escalate a lot more than we can, just because of Russia's size, its military size, and its location. It's right there on Ukraine's border. So Blinken was back then saying that a military escalation from the U.S. side is pointless because Russia will always be able to overmatch Ukraine. Now, I guess what has, to the credit of proxy warriors, that was back in 2015. And I think what I missed or didn't fully, think through is that things have changed since 2015, where for the last 8 years, while the U.S. and Ukraine have been delaying implementation of the Minsk Accords, which is the peace agreement that would have ended the Donbass war between Russian-backed rebels and the U.S.-backed Ukrainian government, Ukraine's been building up a really impressive army and getting trained by NATO forces. And basically, even though Ukraine hasn't officially joined NATO, it's become in that period a NATO proxy. And I think when Russia invaded this year, I don't know if they were prepared for the kind of military that Ukraine has built up to be in the last 8 years. And we're not prepared for the level of military assistance that NATO was willing to pour in, which has made a very big difference in this war. And so I think, that is one difference from today and say 7 years ago when Obama was saying that we shouldn't send weapons.
Interesting. So I know we have limited time, and thank you so much for making the time. So I just wanted to ask you one other thing before you go, just about the sort of nonchalance of many politicians, many media people about this nuclear threat. Like, when it comes out that we are closer to nuclear Armageddon than we've been in 60 years, I think that's cause for concern. Maybe I'm crazy. But I'm just astounded by how just sort of uninterested so many people seem to be. I mean, you take shit from some people for going on like the Tucker Carlson show, and I'm thinking, well, you have to take this message somewhere. And why is Tucker Carlson the only guy in mainstream media who seems interested in this at all, who seems concerned about this at all, who seems to think we should try and stop nuclear war? They asked Tim Ryan in the Ohio Senate debate, what should we do if Putin drops a nuke in Ukraine? And he says, well, if that happens, I don't think it'll happen. But if it does, we should respond forcefully. It's like, no, and Vance, it's J.D. Vance, it's the Trumper, the MAGA Republican J.D. Vance, who says, hey, we should try and stop this from happening before it happens. And so, I mean, you're obviously a journalist yourself. Where is the so-called liberal media? Where's the left-wing media? Where's the anti-war media on this? It just seems crazy to me.
It's a great question. And before I answer it, I didn't actually answer your previous question, which is what is the U.S. strategic goal with Ukraine? And I just think it's been made clear. Lloyd Austin said our goal is to weaken Russia. I've written before about this RAND study. RAND Corporation is a U.S. government-funded think tank that talked about all the ways to weaken Russia, to overextend Russia. And economically, the top suggestion was to stop the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. They've recently checked that one off the list. And the other main proposal militarily was to provide more lethal aid to Ukraine to basically force Russia to intervene. So all this is about weakening another power that is a curb somewhat on U.S. hegemony. That's, I think, what the overriding interest is of all U.S. foreign policy, no matter where it is. It's to undermine anybody that can act as somewhat of a deterrent to U.S. control of the world. And Russia, because it's a big country, and because it has nuclear weapons, it can do that. So the more you weaken it, the more you destabilize it, maybe you can achieve regime change. And that's been openly expressed. Right before the Maidan crisis of 2013, 2014, the head of the National Endowment for Democracy, which is like a regime change arm of the U.S. government, pretending to be a civil society organization, he wrote in the Washington Post, Carl Gershman is his name, he said that Ukraine is the biggest prize. And that if Ukraine can be pulled into the U.S.-led orbit, then that could redound to Russia and Vladimir Putin could possibly be overthrown. So none of this is secret. It's been made very, very clear. And I guess, where's the anti-war movement? Where's the left media? I think Russiagate has been an incredibly successful propaganda campaign. It made being a liberal, being on the left, synonymous with worshiping the CIA, trusting everything that they say, and viewing any attacks on them as an attack on our democracy. And it also meant embracing Cold War chauvinism, because what was the takeaway from 2016? It was that Russia is responsible for Donald Trump and is so powerful that it can brainwash millions of Americans with its memes on Facebook and its email hackers. And that worked on a lot of people because people were understandably scared by Trump's victory. And the answer they were given by the liberal intelligentsia and politicians was that the reason was Russia. And we had to fear Russia. And accordingly, they used that as a means to criminalize diplomacy with Russia. So Trump was a Russian asset because he said nice things about Vladimir Putin. And meanwhile, it incentivized anybody buying into all these insane conspiracy theories that Trump was a Russian asset. Believing in all that incentivized them to look away when Trump was actually carrying out policies that increased tensions with the U.S. and Russia. Most dangerously, I think, killing the INF Treaty, which was a Cold War treaty that had eliminated an entire class of nuclear weapons. And Trump killed that treaty, and the media didn't care because they were more concerned about fantasizing that Putin was blackmailing Trump with a P-tape. And unfortunately, on the lefty progressive side, so many people got duped into going along with that. The show where I learned how to do journalism, Democracy Now!, got duped into following Russiagate. So their top guest on Russiagate was Marcy Wheeler, who, I don't know if you're familiar with her, but is like just an unhinged conspiracy theorist. She's done some good work in the past, but on this, she bought into all these conspiracy theories about the Kremlin blackmailing Trump. And that was, all of a sudden, that became like the message that lefty liberals and progressives were hearing. And those of us who didn't buy into any of this were just simply shut out.
Well, if I remember correctly, didn't she go even further than that? Didn't she say she had information proving a Trump-Russia link and that she shared it with the authorities? I mean, it was a long time ago. I don't remember probably as well as you do.
She claimed to have evidence of collusion between Trump and Russia.
Yeah.
And she also went to the FBI and ratted out a source of hers, who she said was somehow tied to Russia's interference campaign. And we've never heard what this information was because, of course, I imagine the FBI heard this and like said, okay, thanks, and did nothing more with it because it sounds like it's all crazy. But yeah, we haven't heard what came of that, and I think the answer is because it was phony. And but that that mindset became synonymous with being on the left. And I remember actually when Marcy Wheeler did that, when she ratted out her source to go to the FBI, you had all these liberal journalists celebrating that as if like that was a good thing to rat out your source to the FBI because it was done in the name of this higher cause of combating quote unquote Russian interference, which to me, by the way, is the intellectual equivalent of a kid being scared of monsters under the bed. I mean, it was a fear-mongering campaign that a lot of people bought into and still have. And so in that climate where subservience to the narrative is rewarded and people who dissent from it are called all these names and Putin apologists and dismissed, that just became fashionable. And when something is fashionable, when you have this kind of like cognitive capture of so many people, it's very difficult to break out of that. And it's just been nonstop for the last 6 years. So you had Russiagate, that failed. That was like disaster after disaster. So many retracted bombshells, all these insane conspiracy theories never working out. Robert Mueller comes before Congress. He doesn't even know the details of his own investigation. That was humiliating. Democrats immediately doubled down with Ukraine Gate to try to make up for their failure of Russiagate. That led to even more unhinged rhetoric against Russia. So that's when Adam Schiff says that we aid Ukraine so that we can fight Russia over there. Jason Crow, another Democrat impeachment manager, gets up and says that Vladimir Putin wakes up every day and thinks about how we can destroy American democracy. And all this, and this just kept going. And then you had Bountygate. Remember the Russian bounties in Afghanistan?
Yeah, I remember.
You had Russia being responsible for Hunter Biden's laptop and Russia using microwave weapons to injure. So it's been this nonstop propaganda campaign that has been relentless. And people just have lacked, in lefty media, unfortunately, have lacked the courage and the critical thinking skills to see through it. And those of us who do see through it get called names, and that ends up for people who lack fortitude. That becomes enough for them to not want to touch us and to say they don't want to go near us because they don't want to be called names and they don't want the flack that we attract. It's very powerful. It's very much like high school, the way all this works. And which means that unfortunately, one of the few avenues I have left to reach a mass audience is Tucker Carlson. Because Tucker Carlson, for whatever reason, features people on the left who dissent from neocon orthodoxy. I mean, he's obviously got views I really disagree with on immigration, on anything to do with, identity politics. I mean, I think he practices his own form of identity politics and how he feels as if white people are constantly under attack. But on foreign policy, he does have some sort of hostility toward neocons on some issues, not on everything. So China, for example, he's pretty hawkish, but he at least allows on people who aren't those following the neocon line, which is pretty much the only people you hear on every single other show on cable news. And that's what's allowed people like me to go on that show. But it's sad. I'd love to go back on Democracy Now!, where I worked for a long time, and shows like that to speak to a progressive audience why I think fueling a proxy war against a nuclear armed power that also empowers neo-Nazi battalions is a horrible thing. But it's just the left has been co-opted in some ways by people who disagree, and there's been no tolerance for dissent. And that's why, look, I'd love to debate people who feel differently, but try to find someone who will have that debate. You think Matt Duss, who is Bernie Sanders' foreign policy, is he going to have a debate on this? No. The way they're able to keep this narrative going is by not having debates, and that's how Russiagate lasted for so long, is because those who were dissenters simply were just shut out of the conversation.
Exactly, man. I've said on the air before, I have speculated this because we covered one of your appearances on the Tucker show. I said, I'm sure Aaron would happily go and debate on CNN or MSNBC if they would have him. I just kind of speculated that. Sounds to me like you are confirming that, right?
Like I am. Look, of course I am. And I'll tell you a story.
Nicole Wallace.
Yeah,
Post
sure.
Aaron Maté. Yeah.
You know, I'll tell you a story. After the Mueller report dropped, and it was such a flop for Russia Gators, I was invited on this Al Jazeera show called Up Front, and at the time, Mehdi Hassan was hosting it, and now he's a host at MSNBC. And so I was invited on to debate David K. Johnston, who is a liberal writer or progressive, has done some good stuff, but on RussiaGate was a complete dupe. He bought into all that stuff. So we were debating, and I remember this line where David K. Johnston said something about some sort of secret channel between Trump and Russia, and I was pointing out the fallacies in that statement, the facts that undermined the narrative that David K. Johnston was putting forward. And I'll never forget this. Mehdi Hassan said to me, "Aaron, we don't have time for your facts."
Wow.
Wow.
We don't have time for your facts. Now they cut that out of the debate from the final product. So obviously when they watched that back, they realized it's not a good look for our moderator to be saying we don't have time.
Yeah, that was a wise editing choice on their
But
part.
that to me just captures what the dominant mentality in liberal media has been. They don't have time for facts.
Well, Taibbi talks about this a lot, that they'll take people like you, like Greenwald, like him, and they throw an ick factor on you. They basically just try to put you in a bubble where nothing you say is credible because it's Aaron Maté.
Yeah.
You can't say anything about Aaron Maté.
Yeah.
You can't take anything he says seriously.
And that's what I'm saying. This is it's like the intellectual equivalent of cooties. They try to give us cooties.
Right.
It's really that's why it's all very much like high school. It's not based on the intellectual honest thing to do if you disagree with someone is to make the case why they have it wrong. So for example, Matt Duss, who was the former advisor to Bernie Sanders, who's now with a think tank called the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, hardcore progressive proxy warrior, wrote an article in the New Republic on why progressives should support the proxy war in Ukraine. And amazingly, he went out of his way to declare he's making the case why leftists should support arming Ukraine. Okay, fine, make that argument. For some reason, down the article, he goes out of his way and says, by the way, we should not engage with the gray zone. They are grifters. They're clickbait provocateurs, and engaging with them is
grifters. That's everyone's favorite word now, right?
But it's like, under what circumstance would you write an article advocating a policy position and then go out of your way, make the effort to say, by the way, don't listen to these people. Don't even engage with them. They're off limits. They have cooties. It's only if you don't want to engage with us on the merits of your argument. Because why else would you declare someone non grata, especially if at that point we hadn't really done anything about Matt Duss. I don't recall, maybe on Twitter I'd made fun of him a little bit, but it's not as if I had attacked him in some grand way. So that's how scared of debate he is. He feels the need to go out of his way to call us names and declare us non grata. So what I did in response is I didn't call him names. I wrote an article addressing the points that he made in his article about why the left should support arming Ukraine. And I think I debunked them. And that's what intellectual honesty is. If you disagree, you show why based on facts and logic and reasoning, all those things that honest debaters do. But we don't get that. So, for example, people call me all these names about Syria because I've done all this reporting on the OPCW chemical weapons scandal. We'll try to find an article that actually takes on anything I actually say. There's nothing out there. All there is people calling me names, and there's State Department funded think tanks declaring that I spread disinformation without showing even one example of my alleged disinformation. That was this thing called the Institute for Strategic Dialogue, which put out a report recently calling me a spreader of disinformation, but without identifying even one example, without even actually saying that anything I've ever said is false. But that's not the point. The point is put that out there. Give me cooties in that respect, and that lets people then quote this thing. Oh, look, this think tank said this about him, so he's not grata, and that's how it works.
Well, it seems like a lot of people's politics aren't really politics; it's cultural signaling. That's why these institutions can be constantly wrong and pay no price amongst their consumers. If a car company was constantly having their cars blow up, people would stop buying the car. But it's not about getting accurate information. It's about absorbing elite narratives and reflecting them back.
Yes. Yeah.
Alrighty. Well, I know you had limited time, Aaron. It was great to meet you. Thank you so much for making the time for us. You want to tell people where they can find your work? I'm sure they know, but just in case, you got a Substack, Pushback, GrayZone. Get all your plugs in. Absolutely.
Yeah, thegrayzone.com, and I have a newsletter at matte.substack.com, and I'm trying to write at least once a week now, but I'm also working on a book, so I can't do it every single week, but I'm trying to write as much as I can.
All right. Well, we'd love to talk to you again once that book comes out.
Absolutely.
All righty, man. Well, thank you so much. It was great to meet you.
Thank you
Likewise.
very much, Aaron.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Aaron Maté, everybody. Russell, I know you quit smoking, but after a coddle session like that, don't you feel like you want a cigarette?
Well, I can't do it in front of the kids.
Yeah.
I don't want to inspire our viewers to smoke.
That was just a lot of coddling. It was an intense period of
I
coddling.
feel that was a major coddling session. That was like, it was because we've done 2-way coddling. We never did 3-way.
Exactly. We had some questions here. We obviously couldn't really take questions while he was
we
on.
couldn't. Yeah. We had very limited time with
We had limited time, and I knew we would have a lot to say. So we're going to try to get to some questions now. I know some of them were for Aaron, and
unlike some people, we focus on the guest.
Yeah, right. We focus on the guest. All right, I'm gonna scroll back and see if I can find some questions here. Friend of the show, great friend of the show, who's going to be our election night special correspondent. A couple questions for Aaron. What does he see as the connection between this war and the U.S.'s ultimate Cold
all
War
right, so
aims?
Anise, I did see your question, and I kind of tried to get it in there with the "What do you think the end game is?" question.
Oh, okay, cool.
So that was inspired by your question.
Okay, good. All right, good. So we got that. Hey, I figured Russell read your question, Anise, because I saw him reading. I saw his eye line go to the scroll there. Let's see. Super chat from Sandy M. Thank you so much for the $5. Thank you for watching. And you say, thanks for hosting the always excellent Aaron Maté. Yes, that was a great interview. We just kind of pulled that together, but super excited that we could talk to him. Ellen Jimerson gave us a $20 super sticker. Thank you so much, Ellen. Really appreciate that. That's very kind of you. And you also attached to that a chat. Thanks so much for the show and for having Aaron on. Absolutely. Let's see. Let's keep going down here. Somebody else had a question here. Donald, grabbing by the pussy. Trump gave us $5. I rewatched the Brosnan 007 film. So much Russophobia always makes me think Russians appear shifty, shady, and inherently the bad guy. The only... Okay,
I mean,
so
it was the Cold War,
Well, yeah, that was right after the Cold War. The Brosnan was the 90s, right?
Oh,
so,
the Brosnan movies.
The Brosnan ones. Yeah. I know GoldenEye is everyone's favorite Brosnan one, but I actually liked Tomorrow Never Dies.
There was this little
fun.
period where they were so used to the Russians being the enemy, they didn't know what the fuck to do, and then we got the Arabs. So then they were able to shift
right
to Arab people. But there was a little period there where they were like, "Who's the villain? Who's the geopolitical boogeyman?"
Right. While we have everybody here, we got a big crowd in here. You can support our show, patreon.com/do dissidents. Hit the like button on the stream and hit the subscribe button, please. Even if you can't, pitch into our tip jar here. Super chats, we love those. Patreon.com helps us keep the show going, helps us do more of these streams per week. We have a couple of great streams coming up. I believe we are interviewing Shahid Buttar next week. That seems like it is locked in. Shahid Buttar is a wonderful guy out in the San Francisco Bay Area. You may know him as the guy who has repeatedly now challenged Nancy Pelosi for that seat. He has not won yet, but he has done pretty well for a grassroots candidate, actually, and he's awesome. So we think we're going to have him on next week. But the more support we get, the more subscribers. Trivia. Yeah, right, for movie trivia. The more subscribers, the more supporters. We debated
whether we were going to ask Aaron about the Ukraine or about movie trivia. We went with Ukraine. We felt it was more in his wheelhouse.
Yeah.
But I had a lot of great Bela Lugosi questions lined up, but we killed it at the last minute.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. The more we do, the more supporters we get here, the more we can do these streams. It really helps a lot. Sashimi Seductions. I know you were one of the first people who commented. I think you commented on this video yesterday, but right when we put the plug out. Awesome, you guys are getting big names now. Well, yeah, I mean, this was a big this was a big catch for us, and we really appreciate Aaron coming on. It's a very small show for him to do, but as you can see,
it's very very cool of him. Very cool.
Very
guy.
cool. Very cool of Aaron Maté to do that.
So yeah, so Donald, our favorite screen name, or amongst them, Donald grabbed them by the pussy Trump. If they constantly made movies, video games with Jewish people always being shifty, deceitful, it would be called out as anti-Semitic, but it's acceptable to do that towards Russians. All right, so we're actually planning to do a segment because there's just so much damn anti-Semitism floating around right now with us supporting Nazis in Ukraine, with Ye and his edited segment, with Donald Trump recently going full anti-Semite. And yeah, you know, I want to do an episode about how you can get away with anti-Semitism in a way that you really can't in anything else. I've had people tell me about how, you know, different groups are represented in film. And I say, okay, you ever watch The Godfather? Your father did business with Hyman Roth. He respected Hyman Roth, but he never trusted Hyman Roth.
Okay, this was something.
What is it about Hyman Roth exactly that makes him untrustworthy in a film series about betrayal and backstabbing?
Somebody else, I think Brandon, over on the Facebook chat, because we get all our chat messages. I think he floated Alexander Vindman as the guy who Aaron couldn't come up with. I thought Vindman too, but then I thought no. I thought Vindman was a colonel, not a general. I think he's the one who spilled the beans about the Zelensky call and got the impeachment ball rolling. So I don't think that was the guy. Aaron mentioned the general. Remember that he couldn't think of the name.
When was that? Did I interrupt you? I don't remember interrupting you. When?
I knew you're gonna find a way to put that in. All right. So we have another segment that we could do. We wanted to give everybody their money's worth and do a couple of segments here. I dropped a TikTok video kind of related to this, and we're going to cover more of this on Sunday. So for everybody who's watching now, we do streams every Sunday night at 7 p.m., every Thursday between 3:30 and 4, whenever we can work it, since it is a daytime, and we both work day jobs. Once again, patreon.com/do dissidents. The more of you sign up there, the sooner we can make this our day job, and we can do this all the time. So if you can help us out there, that would be awesome. But we are going to be back on Sunday night. It'll be terrible
for our mental health, but it'll be good for you all.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, my day job is kind of relaxing. It's just driving. It's me in the car. And I research for the show while I do my job. I deliver food and grocery orders. And so I listen to podcasts and shit while I'm driving around. That's when I do my research. So it kind of works out that way.
Basically, I'm looking in anytime I'm not working, more or less.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So that all works pretty well. Like I said, we do a couple live streams a week. We want to announce something. We want to announce our midterm week schedule. So we have a schedule coming up in advance of the midterms. But first, hold on. Let me go to Anne. Anne, can you hear us? Anne, are you there? Your live stream is there. Okay, Anne is there. If your mic is on, I'm going to admit you to the stream. Anne, are you there? Can you hear us?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, great. So Anne is one of our Patreon supporters. Patreon members have call-in access to the show. And so I put out on the Patreon email that we couldn't take calls. Don't worry about that. That's all right.
I'll take care of it.
Don't worry about it. We couldn't take calls during the Maté interview, but we could take them after. And so you called in. Thank you so much for calling in. What's on your mind?
Well, not much. I realized I got in late on the Maté interview and was just going to find out what goes on, but I'll replay it later. So never mind.
Oh, okay. So did you have anything you wanted to ask? Or you're just in to watch? No. All right, cool.
Just watching.
Okay, cool. So what I'm going to do then is I'm going to mute your mic, and I have to remove you from the stream, but you'll be able to watch even if I remove you. And then if you want to come back in and talk, just unmute your mic, and that'll be my signal to let you in, and you can ask a question. All right? Beautiful. Okay. Thank you. All right. So, where was I? Yeah. So one of the things you get if you're a Patreon member, is call-in access to the show. So Anne just took advantage of that right now. And so we thank her for it. But I did want to do one more segment while we have an audience here, because a New York Times poll was just released last week that really had the libs flummoxed. They really could not understand the numbers on this poll. The polling did show Republicans take a lead in the generic ballot. Momentum has swung back to the Republicans in the home stretch of this race. We're going to talk more about that on Sunday. But I did want to address this, and I addressed this briefly in a TikTok video, but I thought we should talk about this a little bit more thoroughly, perhaps here. There was a poll out that said that 74% of Americans believe that our democracy is in peril, but only 8%, 8 or 9, I don't have the number in front of me now, but it was fewer than 10%, list that as their number one issue going into the midterms. And Jen Psaki tweeted out in response to this, holy moly, can you believe this? Because one of the other things that was cited in that poll was the fact that about 30% of 30% of independents and about 15% of Democrats said that they would vote for a candidate who was an election denier if they felt they aligned with them on policy. And Psaki couldn't believe that. And a lot of people can't believe, how is it that 3/4 of
a lot of people who can fill their gas tanks don't believe that.
Well, exactly. How is it that 3/4 of people can think that democracy is under attack, but fewer than 10% have it as their top issue? Well, the answer to that is what I said on the TikTok video, and I'm going to get to that in a second, but I do want to share Joy Behar's opinion on this, because Joy Behar went off on this on The View. Now, we're not going to play a clip.
Her nickname on The View is Woman of the People, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Joy Salt of the Earth Behar.
She's Salt of the Earth. She's like Henry Fonda in Grapes of Wrath, that one.
Right, yeah. Exactly. The View is somewhat infamous for putting copyright claims on their videos when other YouTubers share their stuff. So what we're going to do instead is read her quote, and Russell, our resident impressionist here, is going to read this quote as Joy Behar. So I'll set this up for you, Russell. The View host Joy Behar said Tuesday that she finds the economic concerns of voters sad and depressing, and said people don't know what the stakes are ahead of the midterm elections.
Well, what's depressing is that the New York Times released a poll today that says that 70% of voters agree that democracy is under threat, but only 7% of voters rank a threat to democracy as a major issue in this election cycle. I find that so depressing. I can't begin to tell you.
Yeah.
How's that?
Very good.
How's that? I committed.
Oh, that was great work. I thought that was very good.
Thank you.
Because it had that high pitch to it, too. It had the thick New York accent, but she also has a kind of high-pitched New York accent.
All right. I have an audition for Disney Marvel next week. So.
Oh, there you go.
They're looking for a new Thor.
Right. Exactly. Well, look, to answer her question,
a more Jewy Thor.
Right.
It's gonna be called the Semitic Thor.
Right. To answer her question, the reason it's not a bigger concern for people is because people who can't fill their gas tank are less concerned with these sort of deeper thematic questions of autocracy, democracy. In short, the way I put it in the TikTok
that's
video.
how fascism happens.
Yes, that's how fascism happens. And that's what FDR warned about. That's how fascists came to power in Germany, all throughout Europe, right? It wasn't that people woke up one day and decided they wanted to live in a fascist autocracy.
Right.
It's that democracy stopped delivering the goods for them. And the point I want to drive home is that democracy is not an end in and of itself. Democracy is a means to an end, the end being the empowerment and well-being of ordinary people. And when democracy stops proving itself a viable means to that end, people stop investing in the preservation of democratic systems. And so it's not that people consciously want fascism over democracy. It's that a threat to democracy, yeah, we agree it's there, sure.
I mean, Azov.
But what does it matter?
Probably does.
What does it matter? Right? Yeah, who cares?
Sure.
If democracy can't fill my gas tank, if democracy can't pay my rent, if democracy can't get me to a doctor when I'm sick, what do I need it for? What good is it? What good is it doing
well,
me?
well, this is why half of people don't vote. So half of people don't believe in democracy already.
Right.
Before things got this bad, half of Americans didn't believe in democracy. Because if you believed it was going to deliver for you, people do what's in their interest in the end, or what they think is in their interest. They can be mistaken about it, but they will do what they believe is in their best interest. They're not going to vote because they don't see anything in it for them.
Right.
So
exactly.
that underlying belief wasn't there, and now you've made things unbearable for a lot of the rest of the people who did vote. So you have more and more people who don't see what democracy is doing for them. Okay, well, it looks like if this party gets in power, they're going to bring down inflation. Whether they're right, whether they're not right, that's what they believe. They see the world going to hell under this party, so they'll go to the other party. Oh, they don't believe in election rights? Well, I don't exercise mine anyway. And when I do, it makes no discernible improvement in my life anyway. So
exactly. Right. That's what it is. The enemy of democracy is apathy, and apathy is not, and this is what it is. People take that and say, well, it's the people's fault for not caring. Well, no, it's the system's fault for not giving people a reason to care, right? It's the people in power's fault for not giving people a reason to go and vote. They are now, the Democrats still, their closing pitch is the Roe thing, which we knew it would be because it's really all they have. Their economic numbers are terrible. And so they have to run on codifying Roe, and they're holding this over people's heads. Joe Biden still comes out, get me 2 more senators, and we'll codify Roe and keep the House. Now, here's what's going to happen, all right? And I'm going to get to our midterm programming at the end of this stream. Now that we're on this, I don't want to interrupt the flow here. But Democrats almost certainly at this point are going to lose the House. It's really inconceivable to think they can keep the House at this point. The momentum has just trended too far back to the GOP, where Republicans...
You mean Michael Moore's daily emails are wrong? I'm sorry to interrupt you, Keaton. We have a Keaton Stan in here. He's very protective of your right to speak.
My airtime.
Of my airtime.
That's right, of my speaking time. But yeah, it seems almost impossible for them to keep the House, which means they're not going to be able to codify Roe. They're not going to be able to codify Roe in the next session. Now, I'd be very curious to see what happens in the lame duck session, because here's what people have to understand about this, okay? Democrats will have the House and Senate until whatever it is, the first week of January of next year. In other words, they're going to have 2 months between November 8th and whenever the new Congress is sworn in to do whatever they have to do while they have a Democratic House and a Democratic Senate. Okay? They're going to have that lame duck period. So when they lose the House, and it is proven now that no, we cannot codify Roe next year because we didn't get the 2 extra senators, or we didn't get we have not kept the House. At that point, there's going to have to be immense pressure applied to codify it in the lame duck, which they can do, and they can do now. There is absolutely no reason
why there should not be. Can they do that through reconciliation?
They could suspend the filibuster is what they could do.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah.
And what they have to do is there is no reason why there should not be protests 24/7 outside Joe Manchin's office saying, you must vote to suspend the filibuster. Now, that could become much more powerful after the Democrats lose the House, because at that point, this is your last chance. This is your last chance maybe in your lifetime, because it's hard to imagine how the Democratic Party ever rebounds from these first 2 years of Uncle Joe. It's hard to imagine when they're going to have the House, the Senate, and the presidency again. It's really tough to envision a world in which that is the case. So they're going to have 2 more months. And of course, they could do that now. Joe Biden could pull Joe Manchin in now and say, listen, we are throwing the book at your daughter for her EpiPen bullshit unless you sign to suspend the filibuster and codify Roe. That's the kind of hardball that they can play now. They can play it on November 9th after they lose the midterms. They have 2 months to do that. Will they do that? What is going to be the response when they lose? Are the liberals going to just throw their hands up and say, oh, this is why we had to vote, and now what? Are they just going to give up? My guess is yes. My guess is they're not going to be rallies outside of Manchin's office.
Well, as
They're
we
going
were
to do what they did in 2016. They're going to blame Susan Sarandon. They'll blame the people who didn't vote. Blah blah blah.
That's it. They're gonna do exactly what we were talking to Aaron about. You know, whatever the media tells them, that's where they're gonna go. That's what they're gonna believe. That's what they're gonna do. And as with RussiaGate, you know, RussiaGate was a deflection of the elite liberal class to a foreign enemy for their own failures. They're just gonna, but now the foreign enemy is the enemy within. You know, now they turn to, you know, the MAGA people and the evil red hat people, and you know, they're just going to blame it on other Americans. They're going to blame it on sexism. They're going to blame it on racism. They're going to do what they do. It seems like as long as the money's flowing, I don't even know if they care about winning at this point. You know, they only care about maintaining their positions. Look, they get voted out. They're going to go work at corporations. They're going to go work at Amazon. They're going to go work at Google. They'll go work, some of them, depending on the committee they were on, they'll go work at the defense contractors. You think they really give a fuck? They don't care. They don't care. Certainly not to the tune of offending their donors. And if you're not prepared to piss off the people who are going to give you your next job, you're kind of useless in Congress.
All right, Ann unmuted, so I'm going to let Ann in.
Yeah, I wanted to say, it's not like winning this election would give anybody more democracy. You already don't have democracy with gerrymandering in the Constitution, except in local elections.
That's true.
And I saw the best tweet this week. Somebody had written about something where somebody clearly had a huge donation from a corporation and had determined their vote. And somebody had answered, well, why don't we just let the rich people bid for representatives and who gets to own them outright? And the answer was, it's a representative plutocracy, not a direct plutocracy.
Right, exactly.
And it's like that phrase is in my mind now. Now I keep thinking, yeah, it's a representative plutocracy, not a direct plutocracy.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So we have a question here. What are you guys' thoughts on wokeness and the tolerance movement, while at the same time being openly intolerant of Russians, conservatives, or anyone with unwoke views? You know, it's selective. It's selective. I mean, that's why people like me and Keaton, who are pretty far left on social issues, are constantly attacking identitarians who, in terms of the core things they supposedly believe, we don't really disagree with most of it. We disagree with the weaponization of it. We disagree with the fact that they clearly don't really believe any of these things. It's simply a way to beat their political opponents over the head. And really, I don't want to speak for Keaton, but I feel that it actually hurts those causes because it undermines their legitimacy in the public mind when you weaponize them that way.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you could speak for me there. I would sign for all of that. And what I would add to that is, you know, not only do I consider myself pretty far left on those issues, when it comes to the actual policies, I would say I'm very, very far left on those issues. I'm further left than the Democrats have been through even now, I would say. What a lot of these issues have turned into are not so much political issues as just cultural signaling.
Right.
And
right.
Because, look, everybody needs to be tolerated and everybody needs to be accepted as equal under the law. We need equal rights for everybody. That is, however, demanding equality and tolerance and acceptance is very different from demanding celebration. Okay? Not everybody has to celebrate everybody. Right?
Yes.
Not everybody
Yes.
has to feel a certain way about everybody else. Now, I would love for everybody to love everybody. Like I said, my cousin is a transgender influencer, right? And you know, she's happy and God bless her. You know, as Russell has said to people, I speak about her with nothing but pride. I think she's great. You know, does everybody have to celebrate certain lifestyles and say that, oh, okay, so now should hormone therapy be available for children and things like that? Once you take it to those places, you're sort of exiting the realm of politics and entering a realm of something else, right? Now
You're-
this is
you're
about
entering a realm
enforcing
of-
cultural attitudes, right?
Yes, right.
Enforcing social attitudes. And that's
A-
where
and
the
it- and
cause of
enforce-
equality gets hurt, because if you link those two things and allow no room for people to bring their own experiences, their own ideas, their own upbringings to those issues, right? Then you're not just fighting for equality, which should be what everybody fights for, and what I've always advocated for. But when you take it to that other place, you hamstring your own cause. I think Russell's absolutely right about that. Do I still have any liberal friends left? I've lost mine since last year. Can't discuss reality without triggering an emotional breakdown. Yeah, I do. Sure,
I do. We you know what happens? We don't talk about politics. It's you know what having liberal friends at this point, if you're on the left, it's worse than having Republican friends, because I actually feel like I can debate my Republican friends, and I do have some, because they as a rule don't have that idea that you're not allowed to disagree. That's
right. Exactly.
That's more of a liberal thing.
Well, that's what Aaron was talking
That's
about.
how their media has conditioned them. That's
Well,
it.
That's what Aaron was just talking about when he answered that question we asked him about why he goes on the Tucker Carlson show. He's like, look, Tucker Carlson and I disagree probably on 90% of things, but that doesn't give me an ick factor in his mind. He's still willing to engage me, right? Whereas good luck getting Aaron Maté on like the Nicole Wallace show or the Chris Hayes show. It's just not going to happen. There's an incuriousness.
Well, not only that, their own audience, because on occasion MSNBC hosts go off the reservation every now and then. It happens. They get attacked by their own audience. What was it? One of their reporters was I can't remember what it was about Biden. She was questioning something about Biden, and they just went. But the Twitter mob came for her. Like their reporters, even if they know better, they live in terror of their own audience. It's the reign of terror over there. Like you can't even open up this territory. So liberals that I'm friends with, we just can't talk politics. Like really, it's just a subject I stay off with them. And the only liberals I am really friends with at this point are people I've been friends with long enough that there's a deep enough personal bond to get around that. Like if I met them now, I don't think we'd be friends.
Right. I mean, yeah, to me, it comes down to just a lack of curiosity, a lack of desire to actually engage. I've said this a bunch of times on the show that liberals will give you, when you start mentioning certain issues, when you bring up class politics, when you bring up universal health care, when you bring up wages, right? They will not even express a disagreement. They will just get this glazed over look in their eye, like they're checked out of what you're saying. I call it the cat stare, the liberal cat stare. When you're talking to your cat, the cat's looking at you like he doesn't really know what the hell you're saying. That's the look you get when you talk to these people. When you talk to a conservative, they will either push back against you, or oddly enough, a lot of Republicans I talk to are with me on the class stuff. They are.
Right.
Like when you sit them down and actually walk through it, right? They'll be with you. Perfect example. So my uncle is a, conservative leaning guy, not really a political guy, but he's, small business owner. He owned one of these mid-sized small businesses that was really put in a tough spot by the ACA, because if he went over 100 employees, he would have to pay everybody's health care, and his business just wasn't set up to do that. And so he was very, very worried about that. And, he's on the Maltese side of my family, so he goes to Malta every year. He has a little house over there that he rents out and uses it as a vacation home when he goes. And so he's very familiar with Maltese systems. And Malta, like every other first world country on earth, has universal health care included in your taxes. Right. And so this is an anti-ACA crusader, a Republican who was very invested in the Mitt Romney campaign in 2012 because he wanted the ACA done away with, right? So we were talking about that, the Thanksgiving after Obama won. And he's talking about how Obamacare is really fucking him up. And he says, like I said, this is not even a very political guy. He says, I don't understand why we don't just do it the way they do it in Malta, where your taxes cover your health care and that's it. This way, people like me don't have to worry about it. So there you go, man. There's a Republican who, when you actually sit them down and just talk to them, they're actually for socialized medicine. Like most people are actually for the class politics of the left. Most people, even self-proclaimed conservatives.
That's what we saw when Bernie did that Fox town hall.
Right.
And the hosts were trying to go socialism, and the audience just kept clapping. They just ignored it. And that's an independence of mind that I don't think you would see in a CNN audience or an MSNBC audience.
No, of course not.
When those hosts direct them to go here, they go there.
Right.
That Republican audience, they were like, no, fuck you. I like what he's saying. They didn't feel like they had to go along with the party line. That's how
they started. I remember they started booing the hosts. They started booing Brett Baer for cutting him off and trying to sandbag him. Right. We got Edward here on the line. Edward, what's up? You there, Ed?
Yeah, can you hear me?
There you are. I didn't know if you were Edward. We have two Edward patrons, one from Ireland and one from Wyoming. So I had to wait for the accent to know which one it is, but I can discern fairly quickly that the Irish Edward is called in. What's up, man?
Not much, guys. What's happening with you?
We just interviewed Aaron Maté. Did you catch that or no?
Didn't catch it actually. I saw you broadcasting earlier on, but I didn't get to listen to it. No, what did he have to say anyway? He was talking about Ukraine, was he?
Yeah, just a bunch of stuff on Russia, Ukraine, and it was a great time. So that'll be up in its entirety afterwards. Did you just want to hang out and watch a little bit and have unmute if you want to chime in?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's what I was thinking anyway. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, I'll mute you now, and then I'll remove you, and then just turn your mic off. Just turn your mic on if you want me to admit you back in. We'll stay on for a few more minutes because we got a big crowd. But yeah, back. So like, it's just so much easier and so much more fruitful, I feel, to engage the right than it is the centrist libs. Because the thing is, there is an independence of thought on the right that there is not in left of center politics.
Sad.
That's why Trump won the nomination and Bernie couldn't get through on the Democratic side, because the Trump base told their conservative media to go fuck itself when they were pitching them every candidate but
and
Trump.
they're the
People
ones who are
think of
supposed to
Fox
be
News
mindless.
As the Trump network, but it really wasn't. In 2016,
no, they were totally
Fox
against
News
him.
was very against Trump.
Yep. No, they're supposed to be the mindless ones, but that has not been my experience. Now what we're getting here, what Ryan's saying, Republicans think Democrats are good people with bad ideas. Democrats think Republicans are bad people. I don't know how true that is. I take in the whole spectrum of media. If you watch Matt Walsh, he thinks Democrats are pretty bad people. If you watch a lot of people in that space, if you watch Paul Joseph Watson, if you watch a lot of the most popular people in that space, if you watch generally anyone on Daily Wire, Candace Owens, Ben Shapiro, it seems like they think they're pretty bad people. And they will tend to focus on admittedly infuriating culture war things. You know, I mean, they'll show you the all ages Sunday morning drag show that was held in a bar with 6-year-olds and their parents, and they'll pound that every single day as what represents the left, as what the left believes. And that is something that we have very much tried to speak about, how we need to raise our voices and make it clear, no, that's not us. We're not with them. Those people don't like us. We don't like them. We don't agree on very much. That's a whole other deal. Those are your comfy suburban liberals doing the drag show for the kids. That's not us who want the universal health care. Those tend to be two different groups of people. But when you watch those shows, they don't make those distinctions.
Yeah, and really, why would they, right? If they have an agenda that they're trying to win, they're going to try to lump the other side. They're going to try to categorize the other side the way they want them categorized because they want to beat us, right? So it's really not in their interest to be nuanced in that way.
Right.
You know, we do a little bit of a different show here, right? We're not shilling for any one party, right? So you know, we can talk honestly about that. We could be more nuanced about that. But there really is not that space. I mean, look, right now, Matt Walsh, Ben Shapiro, all those right-wing guys, they're in election mode. They're in win mode. They're trying to win an election.
They always cover it.
No, I understand that, but I'm saying, like, now, like, we're not in election mode now. We're not looking at the calendar saying, oh, shit, election's in 2 weeks. We better hammer the Republicans because we want to. No. That's not the operation that we're running here.
Well, something that's really funny to me, because we've brought in a lot of eyeballs. We've grown a lot over the last couple months. So now you get all the haters who come in and, they call anything they don't like grifters. And that's really funny to me because, me and Keaton, we have our faults, we're maybe on the spectrum, but we certainly are smart guys. And we understand how you would really grift in this space. You don't have to be a fucking genius. You go full culture war MAGA, or you go full Pod Save America. And then you can hit up the super PACs and the big organizations that are connected to the Republican and the Democratic Party. Then you can get in on the Theo Bucks, or you can get in on the Hillary super PAC money. You can get in on that money. Doing what we do, man. I mean, we're dependent on you guys. You don't have two nickels to rub together.
We're counting on you guys.
You don't have that Theo money. If we
Is
wanted
there
to
a highlight
grift,
feature?
man,
Can I
we'd go
highlight
full
this?
Theo.
Can I highlight this here? No, I can't highlight it here. You see it. You see it. Here, I'll flash it. Counting on you guys.
Support the show so that we can maintain heterodox positions that aren't going to get us in on the big money.
Yeah, but I mean, that is absolutely where the money is. It's on one of those two sides.
You got to go all the way one or all the way the other. What we're doing, that's grassroots.
Exactly. It's grassroots. And to the extent that we criticize some of our peers in the space, it's when we feel like they are chasing money and chasing clout as opposed to being really sincere. Right. So, like, there are people in this space who I have disagreed with. The late, great Michael Brooks, I think, was the best in the business here. And I disagreed with him on many things. He was a guy who said, no, in a swing state in 2016, vote blue. Right. And he was very upset when Trump won. He thought it was a real tragedy. Right. And even, Sam Cedar, who he worked for, to this day, we were talking about this off air, Russell and I, does a bit of a lib show. Oddly enough, Sam has said on the air before that he has not voted for a Democratic nominee in quite some time because he lives in New York. So he's actually a bit more radical than he lets on. And to his credit, he put Brooks on his show. He had Jamie Peck on his show for a while. She's like an anarcho-communist. Like, she's pretty hardcore. And the thing is, even when Sam takes a more lib position, notice we've never roasted any of his stuff because I really believe he's coming from a sincere place. He got started in 2004. That was those were the Air America days when it's true. Like, the Republican Party at that time was, through the executive branch, spearheading a political movement that was murderous and that was really just putting us on a path towards annihilation and permanent war. And they did that with the help of a subservient Democratic Party, for sure. But when Democrats gave George Bush the authority to unilaterally declare war, and they took that and ran with it, there was reason to fear the Republican Party like death. That's where a guy like Sam came up. And so, as much as I disagree with a lot of what he says, I never feel like he's coming from an insincere place. And so I'm less inclined to dig into him. Whereas when a guy like Kyle is stuck at 972,000 subs for 8 months and then decides, you know what? I'm going to go more the shit lib route. I'm going to start making the Trump scandal videos to start climbing again. And that segment that he did on the AOC protesters we thought was just trash. That's when we really take issue. TYT, same thing. In 2016, the money was in being the sort of fire-breathing Bernie people, right? The Bernie supporting firebrands during the 2016 primary. That's where the action was. And so that's what they did. And as soon as Trump won, the action, the money, was in being part of the resistance. And so that's what they did. And so that's why we kind of go after them more, right? So it's not that I don't mind it if I disagree with you, but when we feel like you're chasing something else, that's when it's kind of becomes offensive, I think.
Well, since it came up, we got a lot of Kyle stans who are really upset about the Kyle segment. Look, I mean, I think Cenk, and somebody here, let's just fold that all together. Somebody said, I'm not sure Cenk is a grifter either, just dumb and clearly chasing an MSNBC. No, he's a grifter. $20 million from Jeffrey Katzenberg. If you go back and look at their fundraiser for hiring investigative reporters. That was really inspiring at the time.
Like, I remember that. I thought, wow, man, this is going to be great. We'll have a whole real, like, alternative investigative reporting thing for the left. And, you know, they have a great platform, and they didn't, they took that fucking money and ran, man. They gave Namiki Konst a few months. And then I mean, you might know better than I do what happened with that. And she was gone. And, you know, and that was it. That was it. So what happened to all that money? That went in their pocket. So as far as I'm concerned, they're grifters. With Kyle, I don't think Kyle's a grifter. I think he is trying to grow his station by going in a more shit-lib direction. All right, man. I mean, you know, you're trying to make your money. I just think being a Kyle stan is like being a fan of warm oatmeal. Like, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what you were telling me. It's not like he's an odious person. He's just boring.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, it's breakfast, but is it really what you want?
Yeah.
You know, that's it. I mean, we might have gone a little hard at him, but it was more about the point of view that he was representing, which is catastrophic, leading to nuclear annihilation.
Yeah, right, exactly.
I mean, you know,
like,
that's what
man.
we're talking to Aaron about. Like, it's madness. It's madness that everyone is being so cavalier about what the consequences of this could be. So that was really, I mean, Kyle, he seems like a nice enough guy. He's just a boring cat. You know, that's all.
No, absolutely. And I couldn't speak to, we have someone on here who just posted that they donated for that investigative drive, gave thousands to them from 2016.
Oh my God. Did you? Well, listen, we have a patron link. We have Patreon.
I knew you were going to plug that.
And we'll investigate whatever the hell you want.
Yeah, I mean, deep-pocketed
I'll
leftists are hard to
investigate the
come by.
dumplings in Chinatown for that money.
Right, exactly. Russell will go anywhere. Russell's in New York.
Yeah,
we do some
sure.
investigations.
Sure. That's the good thing about doing this and living in a place people are actually interested in.
Right, exactly. I really was not much familiar with the investigative reporter.
Look at this. We got another one, man. We've got a lot of disaffected former TYT. I mean, we ourselves, I think, are disaffected former TYT people.
Absolutely. I mean, I maintain to this day one of the best segments, I think, in the history of progressive independent media was Cenk's segment on the Nevada convention, when they accused the Bernie supporters of throwing chairs and shit like that, and Barbara Boxer was there, and she chided them.
And she's the one who gave him the middle finger, right?
Yeah. Cenk did like a 10 to 15 minute monologue just debunking all the propaganda about that. And he delivered it really well. I mean, he's good on the mic. You got to give him
he's got talent. See, we're honest brokers. I'm not just saying that about Kyle to go after Kyle. That's yes, Cenk is a very talented broadcaster. He's very good. He's very convincing. He's very interesting to listen to. He has a lot of charisma. He has a lot of force. He's just a worthless piece of shit. But
right, because how you can go from doing that, you know, with such force and such passion, to then going, you know, like Aaron was talking about, all the Russiagate stuff. He mentions Russiagate as something that really just broke the brains and the spirit and the will of so much of the left. And he's 100% right about that. He's 100% right, because that's really the divide when you look at it. When you look at it, you can really draw a line through this media space. Those who bought into Russiagate and those who didn't. Sam Cedar featured Marcy Wheeler's work constantly. That's how I knew who she was. So when Aaron brought her up, I was able to pull that reference. Because Sam, who I don't think is a grifter, I think Sam is an honest guy. He had her on the whole time. They bought that, right? The rift was Russiagate, right? That was really the rift.
Right.
Oh, Sashimi is a patron. Oh, okay.
Look,
well, thank you so much.
See, but now he doesn't make that kind of money. We're a day late, dollar short. Fucking motherfucker. Why don't you go get another job? Fucking guy. He's coming over here to, I don't make this much. I don't make that much. Go get your fucking shine box.
I like that's the scene in The Sopranos when Christopher goes to shake down the guy at the massage parlor. He says, "You tell me business slow? You got half of New Jersey out there waiting for hand jobs."
Yes, I do remember that.
Yeah, I do remember that. Yep.
When Dora spat on Alex Jones at the DNC convention while on TYT.
Yep.
Yeah,
I remember
hardcore.
that well.
Hardcore.
Alrighty, we're gonna, I think, wrap pretty soon, right? I think we got everything done.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
had to.
At this point, we're just doing a little coffee clutch.
Doing a little coffee clutch, doing a little recap. Edward, anything to say before we wrap, bud? Hold on, I'll put you.
What's up, man? You back to burning coal over there or what? You got coal in the chimney.
No, it actually seems like pretty good here. Like it sounds like we'll have enough. Europe is going to have enough gas anyway for the winter, and fertilizer should be all right as well. That's getting back in line. So
yeah, that's what I forget it. You're in the Republic. You're in the Republic, right?
Yeah, in the Republic. Yeah.
All right. So your prime minister didn't just resign.
No, we're not in. We're not.
Oh, by the way, in response to that, I did want to say one of our new patrons named Jack, he's submitting an article to us about Liz Truss, and I think it's pretty
nice.
good. I asked him to update it now that she resigned, because she just resigned this morning. But he said Liz Truss finally made neoliberalism toxic, and he might be right about that. She had a 9% favorability rating.
Wow. It is the shortest tenure of any prime minister in British history.
Yeah,
it's insane, to be honest with you. The competition to actually get her elected took 10 days longer than her actual time in office.
Yeah, that's right.
How
That's right.
fucking bad it was.
That's right. I saw that.
Like it was doomed to fail, I think. Like,
Yeah.
Well, that's when you know the person must have made a deal with the devil, and all that devil mythology. You get what you want, but it's not what you wanted, right? She must have made a deal with the devil to be prime minister. That's how all those stories end. And then it goes horribly wrong, but she was prime minister, and now the devil has her soul.
but like for someone to be there, like she put them in they had to spend 65 billion pounds just to fix a problem that she made in 44 days. It's actually unbelievable.
Wow.
How fucking much she fucked up.
Well,
And,
it
people are gonna
seems
pay.
like she just tried to go full Thatcher, 2 generations too late for that shit.
Yeah, like when everything else was privatized, she wanted to just re-privatize stuff or something fucking crazy.
Right, and cut the taxes for what, hedge fund broker guys? Was that what it was?
Yeah, people in the city of London,
That's what. Yeah, I mean to be fair, that they were marching for that in London before her tenure, right? To cut the taxes on the hedge fund people. That's a popular issue.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Even I heard yesterday that they actually upped the taxes once they went back on that mini budget that they had published. They actually upped the taxes, and their corporation tax is going to be double what it is in Ireland. So we already have a huge amount of multinational and American companies here. It's just going to take everything that's already in Britain, and it's just going to come here. It's actually mad.
Jack Carolyn says, for real. He's the guy I was talking about. Jack is the one who's writing that article. So yeah, update it.
Cool.
Update it now that she's resigned and send it to us. We will publish it.
And if you write enough for us, we're going to go full Crystal and Sagar and just have you guys do everything.
Yeah, right.
We'll just stop doing anything.
Maybe we'll start paying you. You can break even on your Patreon membership.
Edward, and maybe
back,
you could do the Thursday show, you guys.
Yeah. Yeah, that's in reference to the fact that I guess Ryan Grimm and the other lady seem to be doing most of the work on that show now, Breaking Points. It's like when there would be a student teacher in your classroom when you were a kid, and your teacher would just let the student teacher teach the whole class for 3 weeks. She just wouldn't do anything.
Yeah,
that's
how it seems. I mean, I like both of them, but not as much as Crystal and Sagar. I think they're stronger broadcasters than they are.
Grimm is actually pretty good. I like Ryan Grimm. I know Jimmy
they're
Dore
all
has a
right,
hard
but
on for
Crystal
Ryan
and
Grimm.
Sagar have star quality.
Yeah,
they just have that thing, man. They're engaged. They're interesting. They have that
good.
quality.
It works. They got chemistry.
Yep.
Not as much as Crystal and Kyle, obviously, but they got chemistry. Ann, do you want to turn your mic on? Do you have any final words before we sign off?
But I've noticed that on Crystal and Sager also. And Ryan Grimm really has interesting things to say, but he just isn't a great broadcast person.
Well, he's a writer by trade. I mean, he's more a writer, I think, than a broadcaster. You know, so
Yeah, so
That's all right.
so it's much harder to listen to. Although what he says is kind of worthwhile, and Emily, I don't know, she's kind of grates a little bit, but anyway.
Maybe we'll have Ryan on the show. Maybe we'll try and get him on. We'll say our audience, they like your work. They just think you're a little boring.
They just think, but not as boring as Kyle. So.
Right. No. Well, Kyle,
So
we're
you're
not
good.
getting. Kyle, we got no.
Not
Kyle's
never.
way
We're
below
never
all
getting.
of them on my list.
Kyle. Not in a million years after this. We could say nice things for the next 10 years. We're never getting it.
That clip you had with him was really disgusting.
Yeah. No. I thought that's why we did it. That's why we did it. You know, look. You got to play your cards in this space because you don't want to burn too many bridges that you can't network. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
That's the way you got to do it, right? So you can't really go at someone like that unless you really come to the realization that they deserve it. And yeah, I thought that was just awful. That was just awful. And by the way, we might, we're not sure about this, but we might we might invite the protesters themselves on the show from that town hall.
And we're going to ask them what they actually believe.
Right, exactly.
You
When are we
know?
going to debate
There's
the
a lot of
Vanguard? I don't know.
speculation about what those guys believe.
Lloyd asked when we're going to debate the Vanguard. American Wasp said he reached out to them. I think he's a patron of theirs, and he said they agreed to do it. But then I haven't heard from American Wasp again, so I don't know. When he resurfaces and lets us know what's going on.
They agreed, and then they whacked him for suggesting it.
Alrighty, guys. Well, I think that's everything. So we want to thank everybody. Thank you, Ann. I appreciate you calling in. Edward, be safe and be well, buddy. Thank you so much for calling in.
You too. Thanks, guys.
All right, you got it. All right, everybody. Well, like I said, please like this stream and subscribe to this channel. We're going to clip the Aaron Maté interview in its own segment so people can watch just that and not all this yapping. But we thought since we had such a great crowd here, we should hang out with you all. And thank you very much for tuning in. Thank you very much, everybody who likes and subscribes to these videos. That's how we get guests like that. You can't get a guest like Aaron Maté if you have 400 subs. You know, you gotta. So you guys are really helping us.
Not without threats.
Right, or bribes.
Blackmail.
Right, or bribes. And we certainly don't have the budget for that. So thank you guys very much. Please subscribe to the channel. We've added some subscriptions during this session here, but I got that all in real time, baby. So make sure you subscribe on the way out. And if you can, hit us up at patreon.com/DoDissidents. That is, of course, a huge help as well. You all got the link. I'll put it down here so that it's clickable. Should be clickable if I put it here. And we are also on Substack. You can become a free or a paid subscriber on Substack. Oh, I forgot to plug this. I meant to. So the midterm watch party is going to be November 8th. We're going to start at 6:30 p.m. Eastern. We'll formalize all of this and put graphics up to announce it. But while we got a crowd here, figure I'll let everybody know. November 8th at 6:30 p.m., we're going to have live midterm results. Our pal Anish Shivani is going to be here with us. We're going to have some special guests calling in. It's going to be a lot of fun. We do great coverage. It'll be a lot of fun. It'll be a great night. The week before that, we also have midterm preview coverage. So on Thursday, we're going to preview the Thursday before the midterm. So what date would that be, Russell? Thursday before the midterms. You got a calendar app on your thing? I don't know where the hell I put it.
The Thursday.
Here it is. Thursday is the 3rd. Thursday is the 3rd. So on Thursday the 3rd, we're going to preview all the key governor's races. On the 4th, we're going to break down the House situation. Won't get into every single competitive race since there's about 60 of them, 70 of them, but we'll break into some of the key House races. On Saturday, we will break down the key Senate races. On Sunday night, that is our regularly scheduled live stream, 7 p.m. that Sunday, November 6th, we're going to give our predictions, our final bets on the midterm outcomes. Monday, we will be off, and then Tuesday, starting at 6:30, we're going all night, breaking out the pizza and beer, bringing some special guests in. We're going to have a great watch party. Those are a lot of fun. Seriously, we're not just tooting our own horns. We do that well.
Any of you who saw the patron segment of me drunk in New Orleans, you have an idea of how this is going to go.
Yeah, only it's for 8 hours.
Only
Not 8 minutes, 8 hours. 6:30 to 2:30.
Oh, look,
all night.
Keaton, we're We're sycophants. We're suck ups. So yeah, we've burned bridges
That's
with
how it's
like
done, baby.
like at least half of the biggest left podcasters in the business, and we're just getting started.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Unreal.
Alrighty, guys. Well, thank you guys so much. This was a big day for us, and you guys helped make it possible. So thank you guys all very much for tuning in. We will see you back here Sunday night at 7 p.m. for our regularly scheduled, weekly live stream. In the meantime, be safe, be well. Will you ever do a Q&A with your audience? Sure. Yeah.
I mean, we kind of just did. Right?
Kind of just did, but we can regularly schedule Q&As if we trust you all to show up. Sure, we'll add that.
Yep.
We will pencil that in fact. Alrighty. Be safe. Be well, everybody. Thank you so much. We had a great time. We hope you guys enjoyed. We will see you all next time.
Please clap.